Okay. Neil, it is a joy to be with you today. Thank you very
Hey,
much for taking some time with me.
thanks, Father John. Yeah, glad to be here.
As we begin, I'd just like to give a little word about what I'm up to, and especially to start by saying that I call these interways two-way interviews. It's a little bit odd because I do not presume to be a musician. I did set myself in here with my guitars and the memorabilia from many places I've been, but as an Orthodox priest, sometimes people like an opportunity to ask a straight up question to an Orthodox priest. You yourself, as we'll come to see, you are an Orthodox Christian, and so you may not have the same kinds of questions others have. But I aim in these interviews to be a totally open book because I think that as open as we possibly can be without leading folks astray, it help us each of us to really return face east again to face the Lord and be a good Christian. So, just a brief word about my own self and my background. I'm grateful for the life that I have led. I am an Orthodox priest, as you know. I'm happily married. My wife and I will celebrate this year 32 years. We are grandparents, two sons, two daughters-in-law, four grandbabies, including one born just 2 weeks ago. So I'm moving into a series of tremendous gratitude as we see our children's children. I consider myself also a lifelong learner, and in these interviews, I'm sincerely here to listen and learn about you and your own background and your perspective on things. I try to be a good Christian. For those who may not know what that is, you certainly do. That means I'm going to try with all my heart and soul and strength and mind to love God and love my neighbor as myself. I'm a huge music fan. I got the deal of a lifetime for my 50th birthday. I got to play surf guitar with my friend Armin Brown, who played in the band called the Deweys, plays in a band called the Deweys. And I have an increase in an abiding love in looking backward. Now that I've topped sort of half my life for sure, I'll be 55 this summer. I'll be 55. I'm looking back and asking lots of questions about the decisions I made in life and so forth. So we'll talk about some of that also. Thank you for coming on, and that's a little about me. So we'll start with this one. There are lots of ways that people define their spiritual beliefs in our day, and so I just simply ask you, how do you describe yourself? Tell us a little bit about your own religious upbringing, if any, and where you are today.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. It's a long story because I've been everywhere. I went on a journey. A lot of it was thrust upon me as a child. So when I was young, um, before I could remember, I was christened in the Catholic Church. So
Right?
this was both of my sides of the family were Catholic. We lived in New England. It was right in the midst of budding Catholic scandals that kind of took over the conversation in New England. So we went from a state where almost everyone was Catholic, it felt like, to where, when I go back home now, a lot of the churches we went to growing up, or they're not there, or they're repurposed buildings, and they had quite a tough time of it. I didn't have that kind of tough time personally, but my first exposure ever walking into a church was, I think my parents were having a little bit of trouble, just in relationship,
Right.
and but I'll just say I'll do a spoiler. They're doing great because I'm gonna tell a bunch of stories. They're gonna sound like things are really bad, but God bless us, it's a miracle. Like we're all like
Oh,
close and so my mom and dad, I think they were having a little bit of trouble. My mom walked down to the little community church in this small New England town called Situate, Rhode Island, and
hmm.
we went to this church, and I don't remember ever seeing a cross before or a crucifix. And so I walked up and I was like, she's praying, and
Wow.
she looks like she's holding back tears, but I'm not super tuned into her because I'm super tuned into this wooden carving of this giant crucifix on the wall.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm supposed to not supposed to walk on the altar. My mom doesn't tell me. I just walk right
Oh
up and look at it. Yeah, and I'm
no.
looking at like the nails going through the hands, and I'm like, it was so confusing to me because
Hmm.
what I hadn't seen a thing in the world like it. Where why would this building exist? And that's the thing we're all here to look at. Like that was really confusing me as a kid, but it gnawed at me, like in a I think a good way,
This was did
potentially.
you say 9 years old? Is
Oh,
that
way
right?
younger, like three.
Mercy. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, and so finally, maybe a year or two after that, my parents, I think they realized like if they didn't raise us with some sort of faith, it was going to be a problem.
right.
And so begrudgingly, we all started going to mass, and that wasn't that long. It was 45 minutes. To a kid, it felt like an eternity.
Right.
Um, and so it got eventually get to the point that when I was getting close to the age of being confirmed, my mom, she would sing Catholic weddings, like the actual ceremonies. And so when she would go to church on a Saturday, she would drop us off at church on a Sunday. Like she didn't want to go back again. And my brother and I would like sneak out the back and go to the donut shop. So
Right.
our faith had kind of dwindled down to that. But at the same time, like I was having so much trouble in school.
Hmm.
All my teachers knew I was underperforming. I didn't want to be there. I could ace the test, any test, and just never do the homework, never do the essays. I was one of those like hyper creative, hyper ADD people that it just felt like a prison constantly, like this weird, just being shuffled from one room to another, staring at my teacher. So I was doing poorly. Family life was really terrible. I hated being home. But I had this like compelling need to always look like on the outside things were going well. So I was like a pretty optimistic, even like flirtatious kid with everyone. And so when I hit the age of confirmation, I was having a little bit of an existential crisis. Like life didn't make sense. I didn't know what it was going to be. That story that kind of resonates through every story, the story of Eden, like something's missing. Like there's
Oh,
something more to this that is missing. And so I would say that's like where a thirst and like a hunger grew for what I saw on the wall when I was 3. And I told my
so
parents, I said, I'm
confirmation would have been like 11, 12, 13, something like that.
so for whatever reason in our community, they waited until you were like 15.
Okay.
And I don't know if that was right of them to do, but like normally it was mostly freshmen around the state who were being confirmed, and it was sophomores. So it was my sophomore year in high school. And I just told my parents, I'm like, I'm not doing this. Like I'm not uniting myself to this. This feels dead and it feels lost. And
Wow.
I need to go look for it. Like kind of yeah. So I went on a long journey from there. And my uncle like ran a Pentecostal church, which I
That's
mean,
different.
immediate. Yeah. Sorry, what were you gonna say? I'm going for a
That's
long
different.
time.
That's different.
Way different. But at the same time, like the only Catholics that were really alive in New England at that time, like when you meet someone who was excited about their faith, it didn't feel like an obligation or a pressure. They were the charismatic Catholics.
Sure.
So I had already had a little experience with that. I didn't know what any of it meant. My personality type, I'm not that kind of person. I'm not gonna just like, even though I'm kind of a wild man a little bit and a prankster and a rascal, I'm just not gonna throw my hands up and start singing and yelling in tongues and any of that kind of stuff. So at the same time, there was life there, and I was like, okay, this is alive. Like I can do this. This is a step up in a way for me. But then it was like the search for stability. So it took me a little while to reconcile what was actually happening because I started to read the Bible. I started to listen to scripture. I started to see this fact that there's so many different. I was in a Christian rock band almost immediately. My brother who was in the
Oh,
band with me and my cousin, the band was called Cornerstone at the time, and we were really popular while I was still in high school all throughout New England. We tour. And but I wasn't with them on this like super radical, zealous, like we have to do altar calls. We're gonna go into these towns and we're gonna like Billy Graham add people to the roster of the heavenlies. That always felt like super weird and super phony, but at the same time, they were so excited and so committed to it that I put it back on me. I'm like, you know what? I'm the youngest guy around. I'm the immature one. um I'm not actually discerning this properly. I'm trying to get out of it. Like, I'm
yeah.
trying to get out of spiritual commitments is what I thought of myself. But at the same time, I couldn't reconcile them. They just didn't seem wise, like even just from a psychological level. So one of the things that would happen, I started noticing we'd be in this band and we'd go into a city. The first time I really noticed this was in a place called Lowell, Massachusetts. We played this huge festival, and there was this like high pressure like sales pitch to kind of come up and believe in
Right.
Christ. That's how I saw it at the time too. Like I wasn't like this is a good moment. I was like I just don't want to be on stage right now. And a lot of people got up, and I actually was like, well, maybe, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe these 40 people just their life's going to change forever. And
Right.
so 6 months later, we ended up back in that town at another venue, and there was a lot of people there, and I was like, oh good. I talked to like probably 20 people after the show, and I have a very good memory for names and people I've met. um, I couldn't find anyone from that previous show. I couldn't
Right.
find a single person that I talked to that came up and like responded to this call until after our set. I went outside and I saw a guy smoking a cigarette who I talked to, and I remembered him very clearly because he had hair like a rooster when it wasn't really a cool thing. I think it was an accidental effect.
Come on.
But I was like, hey, what's going on? Like, how's it been? He's like, oh man, yeah, I tried that stuff you guys were talking about. It didn't work at all. Like
Oh, no.
nothing. It didn't work. And I was like, I was so kind of like, all right, I'm not like, I felt like, even though this is one anecdotal example, I felt like I was on to something. And I kept going around and I kept being like, oh my gosh, we're not offering like a door into the church or something solid, right? We're offering like this emotional experience, and they're preaching, and heck, our band was good. We had a good band. Like those guys could play. They could
Mm,
play, and that part of it was good, but the other part of it was just absolutely cringing me out and felt theologically like a terrible idea for these people's soul, what we were presenting or what we were giving them. I felt it was a marketing version of like not even the gospel, like what Christ did. It was basically an explanation of like just by mere belief you could get all this stuff for free. And like good news, you did a bunch of bad stuff, but you got away with it. And it didn't make sense. It didn't feel like the whole story. It felt like part of the picture.
okay.
But anyway, I took off. Like I literally, it was 0 degrees. I was 20 years old, and the community had gotten like super oppressive in the sense that it was like if you weren't at service, like it was like someone's going to talk to you about it. And I was getting a lot of family pressure, and because I was so dysfunctional, I didn't know how to like communicate back and forth about what I was feeling or even articulating what I was feeling. So I'm just like, I called my friend. I was like, we got to get out of here. And I
Wow.
moved from Rhode Island to Florida. um
Wow. You
yeah.
packed up and moved across half the country, south.
Yeah, I didn't know what else. I had no skills. Like I didn't like you have this idea that like in my naivete, like whatever was wrong with me, it might be the location. It might just be my family. It might just be the church I was in. And so I just picked up and left. And
Many people describe that as the geographical solution.
yeah,
And
exactly.
I'm sure if your story is similar to mine, at least insofar as you're a human being and so am I, then we find out that wherever we go, there we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I totally agree with that. And I think what it did is helpful. Like the one helpful thing is that I don't know, maybe it wasn't totally helpful, but I at least now had some space to hold my ground when I came back home,
Yeah.
and talk to everybody. I was like, listen, I'm not gonna be a side character in my life. That's how I thought of it at the time. Like I'm not gonna be a side character, and everybody's gonna decide these things for me. So I actually, once I did that, I actually started to really grow an enthusiasm for Christ and Scripture. So I loved Genesis. I read Genesis over and over again all the time because I was super into typology and no one else was. Like I could not find Protestants that loved the typology, and I just saw things they just felt like so obvious and such a better way to carry the themes of Scripture forward and test them that were established, even just the first 3 chapters of Genesis. And I also loved the Book of Acts and the Gospel of John. John, obviously, because it begins with something like a typological creation story, but Acts really haunted me because I couldn't find that church anywhere. Just couldn't. It's like, where is this? It's not.
Right.
It's not down the road. We don't like the people down the road. They seem to be the same as us. What do we got against them? Why are we mad when someone from our church goes there? What is
Yeah.
this scandal? And so this went on for years, though, of me just trying to like, well, maybe there's a tweak. Maybe it's the Calvinist because they seem to be way less emotional than the charismatics. Maybe they're onto something. But the problem is, I was like learning epistemology and philosophy and metaphysics, and all of these things completely contradicted each other. There were so many growing entailments to the Calvinist belief that was such a problem for me. I hope it's not a problem that I'm talking about doctrines of other churches or whatnot.
Well, you keep
Yeah.
it a little light, but that's okay. It's a part of your story.
Okay, sorry. But what happened, like just simply, so the particular group I was in, I noticed that most of the Calvinists, because they believe in a doctrine of predestination, they think that before we were even here, that God decided our outcome, whether it was heaven or hell, and that he actually makes people for both. He decides. Now,
Right.
Calvin had double predestination, which was he makes people from the very beginning to go to hell, and he makes people from from the very beginning to go to heaven. So the problem with that is that in Reformed theology, the first part of that I said, where he makes people go to hell, became very unpopular. So they would just say, no, it's only the positive. But the problem was, if you study epistemology, you have an entailment with that belief in the sense that there's two buckets, right? One's a bad bucket, one's a good bucket. Here's
Mhm.
40 tennis balls. Every tennis ball is going in a bucket, one or the other. I pick
Right.
the ones that go in the good one, right? So essentially you pick the ones that go in the bad one. So the thing that really broke me out of it was that, like, I realized that in Calvinism, uh, sin is ontological, has an ontological existence. That makes sense. In other words, it's not a privation of the good. It's not like what cold is versus hot. Like hot has the energy, cold does not. It was not this non-dualistic look at it. It was this very dualistic, and that God actually creates evil. He creates Adam and Eve to fall. Um, and so that was the breaking point for me. Also, too, the other thing was there was a performativeness to my own life. Like, I have to be honest, like I still struggle with it. Like I want to sound smart and I want to look good. I want to seem like I'm pious in some way often. And this is, like, I think, a lingering effect of what I used to believe, which was I'm already saved. Like, in other words, I prayed this prayer. Now I'm secured in heaven. So what do I do now? Well, what you do now is you witness. And well, how do you witness? You learn to get good at talking about your faith, and you live a clean, upright life. Well, in retrospect, I can see now that I didn't have like the proper gymnasium to actually like understand the relationship between my spirit and body, and how these two things are brought into alignment in the way Christ established that in the
Yeah.
church. And so I was, I noticed that I was growing, like, philosophically, but not able to fix myself. So I entered a performative mode, right? So you clean things up. It's like, well, I'm not going to smoke. I'm not going to drink too much. I'm not going to swear. And there was like a performative niceness to it that really became like a problem for me as like an artist and as a little bit of a rebel,
Okay.
because you don't, like, the fact that that was something was growing in me, like this idea where I felt like I needed to clean things up for everybody, was really kind of making me soul sick at the same time, because it wasn't like I had learned how that to flow out genuinely. So I figured out that, like, around 2015 and 2017, I was staying in a church, but I was like, are we gonna
Well,
have to do a home?
how old
What?
would you have been at that time? How old would you have been? What
Oh,
did you know
geez.
again?
42.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I Kate and I, like, 40 to 42. Okay. So Kate and I were kind of biding our time, because you don't know. Like, so part of the thing was I was losing trust in myself.
Mhm.
So self trust was a huge issue for me. Part of it is self crowning. There's this self crowning that I was experiencing, which was my job was to have faith in God, and therefore I was saved. But how much? Where's the line? Where's the measuring stick? How do I know I've crossed that line? Where, when I talk to other people who seem completely delusional, they seem to believe it themselves. How do I know I'm not delusional? Not just that, I would make commitments to myself, like, I'm going to change in this way, and I get excited, and then it falls flat. And so you start learning to not even trust your own resolutions.
Sure.
Um, so part of it was like, the only thing that made sense was like, what am I supposed to become like another reformer now and like start a home church or something? And that
Mhm.
immediately was like, it felt graceless, the idea, in the sense that there seemed to be no positive momentum behind that idea, except for the fact that I knew a lot of other people that were in the same spot as me. So at that time, this is a weird one, is I, because of my growing love of symbolism, and because I was kind of breaking free from cultures that didn't like typology or trust typology, I was really getting heavily into symbolism. I looked into Jordan Peterson's maps of meaning. This was kind of before he was popular.
Okay.
And when Jordan started to get popular, I still had kind of my eye on him. And one day he was like on a panel with a guy named Jonathan Peugeot,
Sure.
and I heard Jonathan Peugeot talking. It was like, all of that lands, all of that saw, like that's true. This is kind of like the angle and take on symbolism, typology, and faith I was looking for. So I started following Jonathan, and I would say that after him, like, he was probably most instrumental to me, or introducing us to where we are now in the Orthodox Church.
Right.
But there was just, I also started getting into the theology of it, not just the symbolism, and I started
Sure.
following like a number of priests online.
Right.
And there was just this wonderful coziness because I realized, like, theologically, I was having to jump over these huge holes in the floor, and I'd gotten really comfortable to these incoherent systems. And not to mention that, just dismissing anything I'm supposed to do about it, like the idea of any ascetic practice, things like that, the idea that there are sacred spaces or real transformation in communion, all these things just hit me. And like when I started to encounter Orthodox theology, I cozied up to it right away, but I was still a Gnostic. So the idea that I had to go to an Orthodox church, even though I keep hearing people saying this, it took me a long time to actually walk through the door. It wasn't until 2019, I think, early 2019, we walked through the door, or maybe late 2018. I should write this down at some point and figure it out. Um, so yeah, my wife, I went to church the first time, and I'm a sap, and I felt like I came home. That's all I know to say. And it wasn't like I was making an emotional decision at that moment. It was
Yeah.
all of this stuff I had already believed. Like, it had a body and it had a place to like be released into, like the joy of it. And there was a gratitude to it. And it wasn't like this kind of gratitude that was, I don't know, like running through a field with wildflowers. And,
Right.
it wasn't giddy. It was hefty. It was heavy on my shoulders. And yeah, and so I brought Kate back as soon as I could with the kids, and everybody took to it immediately, just like I did, which was shocking to me. But at the same time, we've never not been like that. But
Right.
I just was like, oh my gosh, because there were so many. The way I describe it is, I think personal taste and preferences were formed against me demonically in a way.
Yeah.
Of course, there are certain things when you encounter orthodoxy that are historical, biblical, um, all the way back to the Old Testament. You see it in the Old Testament. For some reason, you think these things discontinued. Let's just say, like a priest wearing symbolic garments,
Right.
or like carrying the bones of Joseph with the Israelites to Israel. Like these things. Like, oh, we don't baptize babies, but Paul says, circumcision and baptism, like these things go together. And yeah,
Right.
they circumcise, male babies. So it's like, oh my gosh, like what practice am I in? And so when I actually had the experience of, I went to St. Michael's Church in Louisville, Kentucky, and they have a wonderful chanter and choir,
That's
and
quite a place.
a really wonderful in like the largest nave ever. Like, you're in there, you're like, what the heck? I didn't even know
Right.
what was crazy, because it's not the most aesthetically beautiful church from the outside. I was in Louisville for like 15 years. I never knew it was there. But if
Interesting.
so I make this. This is, again, I'm going to rabbit trail on you, Father John. I'm sorry, but
Right.
when I think about the part of the church I'm in right now, we build it's got to be beautiful. It's got to be a thing that, like, everyone knows the name of it. Everybody, when they friend comes in town, they
Right.
drive and buy it. Like, if it had been that, I think I would have known about it so much sooner. But they were doing their best. But it was so funny because when I finally went into it, and I saw all of these people, and it was this incredibly rich,
Mm.
historic, like, well thought out. It was like drenched in symbolism. It was like a super saturated solution of symbolism. Everywhere I looked, it had meaning. And because
Yeah.
of what I had already studied, you could really see the way the service and the architecture and the role of the deacon and the priest and all these, it was like a visual representation of something my senses are too weak to pick up. It
Yeah.
was the architecture of a well-ordered soul put
Mm.
in front of me in the liturgy.
Mm.
And so I hesitate to tell the story because it just sounds like an emotional decision if you just start with the first time I walked into an Orthodox church. But there had been so many things that I was so convinced of already that I needed an experience like that to take away the way my tastes were formed against me, in the sense that, like, I think every person who calls himself a Christian probably has some idea that there's something demonic in the world, and this thing is trying to get us to like things and love things and prefer things that lead us away from God. If this life is like a cosmic marriage to be united to God, the demon's job is to point out all the mistresses and all the things that cut us off in the past. So, but it had never occurred to me that iconography, even things like the sign of the cross, like priests, symbolic garments, relics, all of
Right.
these things that were just so, like, I can't go in that building. To me, at first, I was like, my tastes have been formed against me, just like they were sexually, just like they were in all these other areas. And it was such a delight to just feel that melt away.
I would like to add, if I may, just a point or two, and I'd like to ask you about your own your earlier life and how it relates to your music.
Mm-hmm.
But the first point is, I challenge many priests. I have a chance to travel around the country and visit lots of churches all the time, and the number one recommendation I give in most places is your sign outside, which of course needs to say the name of your church and visitors always welcome, should
Mhm.
actually say, you won't believe what's in here.
That's great. Yeah,
And,
it's like
and,
like the
and the
house
truth
that
is
says I'm
that,
beautiful on the inside. Um,
but the truth is that the number of people, including those who had strong opinions or beliefs or were formed, I forget the beautiful way in which you described it, formed against them for a long
yeah, our
time.
tastes are formed against us. Yeah.
When one comes inside an Orthodox church, most people say wow twice, and many of them cry.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Well, that was us.
they wake up and
Yeah.
they say wow, and then they
Mhm.
look again and they say wow, and then usually cry because it's so overwhelming, and God is doing that work in them. So we need those signs. You'll not believe what's in here. Could I
That's
could
a
I
really good point. Yeah.
Could I ask a question based on your earlier story? You
Hmm.
mentioned you fled at 20. You were not having it at the time of what was being what was being sold at the concerts, and the oddness of your family's. Did you mention your cousin was Assemblies of God pastor, something like that?
Yeah, my
So
uncle. Yeah.
from my perspective, I am a musician by hobby, and most musicians would even say you should get another hobby. But so I was, from my perspective, not as a musician and not as an artist. It seems to me that most musicians and artists write from some perspective of deep loss, pain, or existential crisis. And I wonder if you could, if that's true, would you talk about the font of your own music? And if that's different in your life, what is that like in your life in terms of how you write your music?
Okay. So what you just said, well, I think is a great insight about the struggle, the pain. I kind of come across as a happy-go-lucky guy, but
Okay.
I had from the time I was young, if I did something wrong, I would almost go like schizo. Meaning, I'll just give you a weird story about it. This might give you some insight into my
Please.
creativity. So, I'm a little kid and I'm probably 5 years old, and we brought back coloring books from the circus, one for my brother, one for me. And my mom said, Neil, color in your own book, don't color in Adam's. I was like, so she wrote his name really big on the cover, and I wrote my name really big on the cover. I was like, oh, okay, great. I'll color in mine, he can color in his. Now, I sit back down at the table a little later. I start coloring. I'm coloring. I color a few pages in of circus animals, and I close the book, and the name on the front says Adam. And
Oh
I'm like,
Lord.
good. Oh, like I don't know what it means to be in trouble. Like I don't understand things, so I panic as a kid, and so I literally hide this like under my shirt. Tell my mom I'm going outside to play. Wander off into the woods, dig a hole, bury the book in leaves, and
Wow.
come back into the house. Now it was Edgar Allan Poe's the Telltale Heart from that moment on.
Oh
I was
no.
haunted by the craziest thoughts of like, oh, it's 4 years from now, and here comes some men to work in the woods, and they're going to clean off the leaves, and they find this book, and they're
Right.
going to bring it in, and my mom's going to find out that I buried my brother's book and had lied and colored in it. But the big offense was I accidentally colored in it, and so um, it probably went on for 3 or 4 months. There was another there any instance where I even fell short. Like one was like I was late to swim
Okay.
because I could swim underwater and I would just come up. So I never learned to swim on the water much. And uh, we went out. My parents were hanging out with some of their friends, and I went out with their kids. And all of a sudden, like I had gone in over my head. There was a really steep drop off, and I just grabbed onto people next to me. I don't remember any of this really, but I just started drowning everyone near me, trying not to drown. And when my parents saw me and they saw us and they pulled me out, I was so embarrassed that I was that weak that I could not. I remember thinking about this every day. Like, not just every day, but almost like every 15 minutes, it would come to my head for months. And I would just pray for like the one day where it didn't, like my failure didn't come into my head. And so finally, after like, I think it was 6 months, I realized the day before I didn't think of it and I felt free. But so I had a problem. I had a problem where there was like, uh, obviously I was like hypersensitive. Things that maybe would have rolled off a normal person hit
Yeah.
me like a ton of bricks. So I
Hmm.
had a lot of manufactured suffering. It wasn't like I had the worst life possible. Although my dad was an alcoholic and drug user at the time and growing up until I was like 16, he was very successful and famous. All of my family was pretty much musicians on both sides or entertainers. My mom was a jazz singer.
Wow.
And, our family Christmas party were like the Von Trapps from The Sound of Music. Everybody knew their parts, everybody sang.
Perfect.
So lots of professional musicians. And again, my dad was in entertainment. So I was around that a lot, but I think I suffered like in a way like people didn't know the way I would beat up on myself too. Um,
Oh,
and so that continues a little bit to this day in the sense that you're absolutely right. Like, so I can sit down and be goofy and write a funny song with my friends. Like I can like we can do that, but the stuff I care about, it comes from like a place like I almost don't want to think about it. It's like it's kind of dark. So like when I hear stories in the news or you think about your kids in the future or whatever.
mm,
It's just like these things kind of haunt me and I'll chew on them. And it's almost like a process of, and I'm kind of getting tired of it, but it's like breaking your own heart. It's like putting yourself in someone else's shoes so much that um yeah, and I have to feel it to like so it comes from an authentic place. Because when I just write intellectually or academically, it just
yeah.
doesn't have the same. It just doesn't have the same ring. So my process is, yeah, I have to think about things I don't like. I'd rather avoid thinking about, like some of the dark things in the world. Um, like COVID was like wonderful creativity fuel. I hated it. Like I hated everything about it. I hate that I said that on your channel because that the word you can just bleep it because YouTube doesn't like it. But the coof,
Like the word COVID
yeah,
or the word, oh, okay.
yeah, they don't like the world. No, I was just so angry. I felt like not angry like telling people angry about it, but like my kids were locked out of school. Like they're in their developmental years. It's like suddenly like they're trying to do like in like where we were, they went for like a year and a half with masks on and limited schooling and Zoom calls. And I'm like, that's too much development. We're going to turn my kids into sociopaths. We're moving. So we picked up and moved to Florida.
Wow.
And yeah, so anyway, but that really kind of spawned a couple of records for me. Because of the way I write, we gave ourselves this added challenge of kind of diving into the rock opera concept album genre, meaning
Right.
that we liked having a libretto, like a story that carried through,
Sure.
and that generating the song ideas. So it was the added challenge is if it's not like we sit down and we're like, hey, let's just write a song about anything. It's like, no, this story, I don't know where it's coming from, but we need to tell this story.
Yeah.
And so the songs have all these points where you're punctuating, not necessarily as a matter of exposition where we're explaining the stories, but they're driven by story moments that are familiar to us. And it creates, I think, sort of a cohesion in when you make a whole record like that for the
Yeah.
audience and for
Yeah.
fans to dig into. So, but those things sadly come from like sadness and like frustration. Like that's where my good ideas come from. And that's kind of why I like want to do something different sometimes. I'm like,
Right.
I don't want to have to do that every day, to really come up with something good. I don't know if I
Yeah.
sound crazy, but that's kind of how it works to a degree.
I appreciate hearing that very much.
Yeah.
I mentioned a little earlier this year, I will turn 55. And I look back on my own life, and I would say I have a lot of regret about my own life.
Yeah.
Though at the same time, I'm grateful for God's forgiveness. And without the things, without those things, including the things that I have had to repent for and continue to repent of, I wouldn't be me. So I'm grateful for God's forgiveness. I would say, without talking about regret specifically, necessarily,
Mhm.
um, what would you say to your 20-year-old self if he were here today?
Oh my gosh. Well, there'd be a short answer, but I would have to respect the fact that my 20-year-old self would need a heck of a lot of deprogramming.
Okay.
So I don't know if I could just say what I wanted to say to my 20-year-old self because all of
Okay.
the experiences in between then and now are kind of how I got here.
Fair enough.
But
Same,
yeah,
same for
but
me. But he's here today, and I don't know what might you say to him. What warning or encouragement? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
yeah. No, that's great. So I have godsons in the church, which I kind of relate to. And I think that my advice would go down that direction. So, first of all, I would tell myself love God, and you'll miss out on nothing.
Mm.
Okay. What do I mean by that? FOMO, like, oh, I want to go to Italy. Oh, wouldn't it be nice to win a Grammy? Wouldn't it be nice to do this? It's like, this is this is a shadow of what is to come. All those things you want to do, all the good that could be in it, this is a shadow of that. You will not miss out a thing. I talked to my 20-year-old self would not have been married. Like, that would have been a problem for me. What if the world ends before I'm married, right? It's like, you're not going to miss a thing. Like, this as beautiful and as wonderful it is, to participate in the struggle of marriage and that experience, you're not going to miss out on it. Like, the monastics are not going to miss out on marriage. This is what the Christian story is. So I think first I would be like, like when the apostles, after Jesus drives off the masses who want more food, and he says,
Right.
well, drink my body, eat my blood. Right. Well, I said it backwards, but and you get what I'm saying. I'm dyslexic. So and the apostles turn and they say, like, when he says to them, aren't you going to leave too? And they say, who else? Where else do we go? Who else has the words of eternal life? And so, first thing I would tell them is that. Second thing I would tell them is what it means to be saved, I guess, which would be, you're gonna fall and just keep getting back up. And he who began a good work in you, he's going to do his part. If you stay on the way, no matter what, no matter how bad it's going, you're going to be fine. That's probably what I tell them. Like, those would be the first two.
That's beautiful. There's a great little book called The Way of the Ascetics by Tito Colliander, which I came to appreciate very early on in my young adulthood. And he said, a monk was once asked, what do you do in a monastery? And the monk answered, fall and get up, fall and get up, fall and get up again.
Yep, yeah. Perfect. Beautiful. I love it. I want that on a shirt. That would be, and then the third thing would be, wait for Kate, your wife. Wait for her. She's coming. So that would probably be it. To start. That's my three things I would tell myself. I'm glad you made me think through that, because that was off the cuff, but I think those things are.
It's meant to be off the cuff, and I'm glad to hear those three things. Yeah.
Well, it's so hard to break the spell of the world. I mean, so, when you think about, like, talk about deprogramming for a second, like, the old, like, there's an idea someone put across, is like, if you're walking through Manhattan and you see a group of people staring up and pointing at the top of a building and squinting to see something, depending on the, if there's enough emotion and attention put into it, you're going to look too. Oh, yeah. And once you look, the people with you might stop and look, and then the other people, and it can start a chain reaction of looking. I think we underestimate how much power, in a very natural, like, sense, like, to our fallen selves, how that can hijack our sense of what is good and what is important, because we've got a culture that's just looking at, with all of their might and all of their strength, the wrong things. Yeah. So this is part of the things that, like, it's so difficult when you're trying to mentor yourself or other people, is that as soon as I walk out of church or I wake up in the morning, it's just a constant assault of a culture that's been, through technology, sort of, in a way, weaponized against us. Yes, there's good out there. There's plenty of good. I see good all the time. The things that are dominating people's pursuits, whether it's, money, any of the passions, like, these things that are dominating people's pursuits, it's just going to make it worse. And, and so, but I mean, the same problem we have is that while I'm trying to help someone else out with that, I need help too.
Yeah.
And this is one of the gifts that's been in the church for me, because, like, the idea that you can fast with your eyes, you can fast from media, you can not participate in things that actually, all these ideas that come into your head, they're not your own necessarily. And right. By entertaining them, they're going to take root in your body, and you're going to want to do something about them. So I'm being slowly trained in a way, where I can feel the medicine, not just the medicine of the working out of, like, I mean, listen, it's a workout to go and stand. I go to a ROCOR church. Yeah. I stand for 3 hours. I couldn't do it at first, in the sense that my back couldn't do it. Yeah. But I'm kind of learning there's this dual thread of just doing it and letting the pattern, the obedience, doing it as an act of obedience and love to God, but also that changes me, that these practices change me, because I think hopefully I'm not self-assessing wrong, but I seem to be gaining more dominion over myself, if that makes sense. Like my appetites, like I don't have to struggle with dieting like I used to. I'm not walking around thinking about what I would prefer every moment. And I think that's a direct result of some things I would never encounter otherwise. And then also learning that if I'm not living a Christian life during the week, it's almost
Yeah.
impossible for me to participate. Like I'm just distracted. I don't want to be there. I'm waiting for things to end. Um, but hey, when things seem to be on a better rail, in my life, suddenly I'm there and I want to eat it all because I haven't eaten the world. You know what I mean? Like if I go out and eat the world, I'm not going to want to eat the good things for me. So these are the kind of things I'm learning, and
Interesting.
yeah, I think it's changing me as an artist too. Whether I meant that to happen or not, I think all of these things are reshaping me, and I'm having to reprioritize why I do this in the first place because um, I used to like those eyeballs, the same eyeballs that look up the building. There's a thing when a lot of people are looking at you, people treat you differently, like,
Yeah.
and a lot of times in a good way, in a powerful way. So I'm having to recover from that sort of thing, even though it wasn't like a main part of my thrust. Like I'd never really wanted to be a star necessarily. That always seemed like a hassle. But all these other things you get from it and the reasons you do it and what you're looking for out of it, I'm finding now that like um, if I start saying things, if I start to speak and I decide, you know what, I'm not going to say things that put me in a better light. I'm not going to say things that would make people think better of me for those reasons. I'm
Right.
learning. I'm not going to say things I'm just speculating on, right? I find I have very, very little to say, Father John. So this has been such a good thing for me because I think love is doing this to me. Like I don't know what else to say. It's like there are people that used to annoy me that don't. There are people that, by all rights, in my own church that should be annoyed with me. That I should not want to have anything to do with them. But we drink from this cup together, and I don't know what's happening. It doesn't seem rational. But I'm suddenly I care about like old ladies that were just like in a utilitarian sense. It's like
Right.
that's a hassle. I don't know how to talk to her. She's gonna say weird stuff to me. I'm gonna avoid her. And those
Right.
things are changing, Father John. So I'm excited. That's what when you say, you're grateful for your life. In that way, I could definitely say I'm grateful for my life because I don't know, I see signs that love is starting to win.
Beautiful. Let me ask you a more personal question. You were
Mm.
talking about uh, being a star or not being a star, seeking it or not seeking it. But the truth is, as a musician with thousands and thousands of people who listen to your music, who buy
Hmm.
your albums, who see your concerts, and you and your wife have been doing this for some time. Um, I would ask this question, laying aside the labels that others may put on you, whether it's the fans, the media, friends, or enemies for that matter.
Hmm.
If you had to describe yourself in three adjectives, what would they be and why?
Yeah, I mean, these are gonna feel like they might feel performative because, like, the first thing would be,
All right.
an Orthodox Christian, and not in the sense that I'm like a really good Orthodox Christian, is
Yeah.
that the Orthodox Church accepted me. So when I go on podcasts, if someone asks me about my faith and they ask me why I'm a Christian, it's a different answer than before. Before it was like a little bit more of a self-crowning thing. Like I have this faith and I have this belief and it's good and I know it's enough. And
Right.
now I'm
Right.
kind of like, hey, they brought me, they accept me into the church. You know what I mean? I was received into the church. I was elected to for their part into this, and so um, I love that credential because now it's not like, hey, I believe enough, God accepts me. It's like it's not like that anymore. So yeah, so my first thing, that's obviously my core identity because if I understand why I was made as a person, not as a family member, as a community, I was made to be in union with God, and this is the thing I miss the most when it's missing in my life. This is the deepest pain I have when it's gone. So I'd have to say that would be my first identity. I think that, and then it follows. It's like husband and father.
Mhm.
Musician comes very low down the list. There are people that talk to me like I'm a guitar player, and I'm like, I guess I am. Like, I mean, I don't know how else to say, but I kind of I pick it up when it's time to play music. I mean, for whatever reason, those things came easy to me, and the reason is probably practical. It's like I have my parents were musicians, our family's all musicians. It was
Right.
not something I had to adapt to. It was something I was immersed in.
Right.
So that side of it always comes, it comes pretty easy to me. But I don't think so. What happened is the other reason I wouldn't say musician or anything like that isn't. I am an artist, but it's again it's a much lower identity. Is that I don't I don't put a lot of stock in that identity. I think that I think I have a dirty job, like
Yep.
people who work at a sewage treatment plant do. I'm not. I'm not on the altar. I'm not in the nave. I'm not in the narthex. I'm like, how? I'm in a world where how does this thing that's happening to me flow out of the church, and how does it flow back in? Like in the sense of dirty job, in the sense that rock and roll's a problem. Like I think a lot of these genres are they're an inherent problem. There's something like a trauma response to the 20th century, 21st century events. I don't
Yes.
I don't think we have rock and roll if we don't drop Little Boy on Hiroshima. I don't. I don't think I don't think we have rock and roll if we don't have the Holocaust, if we don't have the genocide in Russia and all of these things we've created. I mean, Einstein said it. He said our technology has surpassed our humanity. And I mean, there was a generation, our parents uh, grew up in a world where it went from, people used to have to see each other to die. And now it's like, oh, you could just be eviscerated. And now you're running drills where you're hiding under your desk, practicing like as if the radiation wouldn't melt you.
Right.
You're hiding under your desk. Like we don't understand human anthropology if we think that humans can just be flexible enough to absorb these changes in the world.
Yeah.
So I think rock and roll is something like, well, I just put this line in a song that's going to be on our next record. Well, it was close to this line. It was, I think, uh, the answer seems farther. Like the answer seemed farther, so our voices are getting louder. Um, and I think that's what rock and roll is. So I understand that it's not necessarily like a heavenly form of music. It's not something that's suitable for church. It's something that was born out of just the times. It's something we're born out of the times and these genres that keep moving in that direction. So
Comes back to the
there's
question of the font of pain.
yeah.
Comes back to that question a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, and so rock and roll pops up at first, and it's a little satirical. I mean, the songs are kind of funny almost. You know what I mean, like Jailhouse Rock, and these wop bop a loop bop a bop bam boom. But that's how ideas get in. You know what I mean? So like, this is how AI gets in. It's like, oh, AI video. This is a real problem. Everybody understands. I think most people understand that this technology can really create a lot of confusion and but will and most people, so if I go and put something AI up or whatever, I'd get 1,000 comments of hate for it. um and we've experienced stuff like that using thumbnails and other little things. But if you put up a meme in AI, people accept it. So it's through the funny part of it, it's through the satirical that these things are beginning to get accepted. So we have even more tools now, dystopian tools, where it's I think some people are finding it heartbreaking, like musicians and artists, to see that there's such formidable competition coming from a machine that we invented. The self-replacing aspect of it. So there's new levels of things happening right now, and of course, our suspicions about the entertainment industry and the political industry and what the elites are really like. Conspiracy theorists are eating good now. Like everything they were saying, it's like it just there's receipts for it now. So for me, it's like, okay, well, this is the language. This is how we talk in a world like this. So I actually, despite the fact that I think rock and roll is like a trauma response to some of these horrible things in a way, all these new emerging genres, I still kind of love it. Like I was born into it, and I can see it's like an accent I know where I can go out and relate to people that aren't part of my tradition through it. It's like a common ground where I can talk about my ideas and and we can go back and forth. So I appreciate it for that sense, but at the same time I got to understand like it's just like what an actor was in the 6th century. It's not a good thing. Like an actor has to lie for a living. So there's part of this when I pick up and you pick up
Huh.
the idea that you're going to be on a stage and you're going to be in front of people and it's going to be deceiving to see them like them enjoying you might be a bigger problem than them hating you for your own soul. Like I don't know what to say. So I have to take it very seriously in the sense that like, yeah, it's a dirty job. It can make me sick. But somebody's going to do it because, well, the priest's on the altar, and it's the people who are in the nave and the narthex that have to go out in the world. So um, I think of my job that way. It's kind of a weird way to think of it because it's weird. I have a love-hate relationship with being an artist and creating in our culture because I know what it means to our culture, and I don't think we understand what it means or what God meant it for in the first place. At the same time, this is how we talk, and this is how we talk back and forth. So
Yeah.
this is what I do. Does that make sense? Or what do you have any advice for me in this thought?
Sure.
Or yeah,
I would hold the question of advice for the moment, but it does make sense and I appreciate it.
okay,
Maybe we'll have the advice at the end.
okay,
Um,
great.
let me ask you one other question before we come to the two ways part. Um,
Hmm.
I'm learning that there's a big difference between success and significance.
Mm.
Um, Measures of success, money, followers, number of plays, what you do, where you play concerts, who you are, etc. Measures of significance like lasting and positive impact, service to other, whose you are rather than who you are,
Hmm.
why you do what you do rather than what. Um, let's discuss significance for a few minutes.
Okay, so let me go with my first impression of what you're talking about. It's a
Please.
great idea. I heard someone say once, I forgot who it was. It might have been Rick Warren, the guy who wrote The Purpose Driven Life, but he was
Yeah.
talking about prominence does not equal significance.
Mm.
So the notion here is like my nose is prominent, like it comes out farther on my face, but it's like I
Right.
can lose my nose, I can't lose my heart and live, right? My heart,
Right.
you don't. Where's my heart? You don't see it, right? So
Right.
there's tons of analogies to understand this idea and the falseness of like how we evaluate significance in ourselves and others. So I think that, well, there's, I forget which passage this is in the gospel where Christ he's talking about first shall be last and the last shall be first.
Right.
And this is like the first thing that comes to mind when you think about like purpose, when I think about this, because I think about like, okay, imagine a pristine lake, perfectly clear at night, and above
Okay.
it is the open sky, right? So the
Right.
moon's really high in the sky, and and like the moon in the reflection is very low in the reflection, and the
Okay.
stars that are highest in the reflection are the ones that are lowest in the actual heavens.
Okay.
So I feel like we have to understand that there's there are two ways to look at the world, and one is to prioritize the reflection over what is above. And I'm
Right.
getting this isn't like a very personal, emotional point. It's more of a philosophical point. But it really seems like that's one of the analogs in nature. So, like, if you want to prioritize the values of the reflection, being well loved, which sounds like a good one. Like maybe you did some good things to be well loved, but pursuit of that before you are doing a thing is, that's propaganda, is an agenda. Um, being well loved, being successful financially, being attractive, all of these
Right.
like these gold coins of worth we hold on to, these are part of the reflection. And so what happens when the other economy is revealed to us, we realize we're at the bottom when we thought we were at the top.
Right.
So that's the only way I know how to think of it. And so the other side of it is too like um we do get treated well. Like really often, we get asked to speak at conferences. We have highfalutin friends, things like that, and people think you're. I don't know. Like sometimes when people talk to you, they're like hungrier to be around you and or to impress you and these kind of things. Like I mean, everybody who's had like even a little, maybe you only had 1,000 streams of your song, and you might get that from there's probably someone in there who thinks you're the greatest musician. We're at the point now where we're getting millions and millions a month. So to people, that looks like, oh, a lot of people are looking at this. So when that happens, now it's a very different experience for me because it almost makes me a little sad because like I know that struggle. I know what it's like to like even if it's positive, like looking up to someone. I don't think we're really like you can't look up to us overall for the first, point. Like I think a lot of times when people start to get good at a thing, they think it translates to like every idea in life. Like suddenly you're going to be great at all these things because
Right.
and we fall into the self deception. Um, so it's been really humbling for me because I don't know. So like I'll put it this way. Here's how I'm thinking about it now, and you tell me if this is a good idea.
Go ahead.
I noticed when I was younger, and you noticed had a friend who got into a dating relationship or was thinking about marrying someone. It's hard to see around corners. Like, what will this be like in 10 years, 20 years? Because you're all trying to help each other, hopefully, if you're good friends, avoid mistakes that would be, of that level of consequence. Like, let's say, um, choosing a mate and going into a situation that wasn't a good fit and ill prepared for that bad fit.
Right.
But I noticed that some of my friends, like, they'd get around someone and it was like they were a better version of themselves around that girl.
Yeah.
Right. And the girl was a better version of herself around him. And then I didn't feel like I had to know the future. It was like I could just kind of be like, well, I have no signs that this isn't producing something good, so I can endorse this, or I'm like, thumbs up. Um, as I'm getting older, I'm realizing that like part of the gift of having a set of eyes that can look at something and assign value to it that was given by God is that maybe there's a way that everyone we can encounter, right? We're drawing something better out of them than uh they're like, I'm a better version of myself around these people. I'm like that around my priest. I adore my priest. He puts his heart and soul into our church. He works hard. He's always thinking about us. And I'm a better version of myself around him as a result, because he has high hopes for you as a congregant, as a communicant in his church. And
Yeah.
he has a lot of goodwill, like almost an immeasurable amount of human goodwill for us, I feel like. And so what does that do for me? Well, when I'm around him, it's like I want that too. Like I want to catch that. I want to be around him. Also, I have to confess, it's like, all right, like, do I really want to do something willfully this stupid that I have to go tell someone who's working so hard to love me and pray for me? Like, so I noticed that I'm a better person, a better version of myself around him, a better version of myself around my kids and my family. Although they get to see all the worst,
Yeah.
there's no place in the world where I'm putting more I have more high hopes for and putting more work into it. So I think that I think that's important. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I'm trying to address it when I talk to someone. Because there is a way in which you have to be above compliments and below insults, or vice versa. Again, I said it backwards, dyslexic. You have to be above those insults and below the compliments, because this is like a manipulation economy that can be used by people all the time, and myself included. But I think that also one of the things I was thinking about when it's like, how do I really bring out the best in someone else? And I think there's a way that we can see in them, without being too overconfident. Like, perhaps oh, my phone is getting called, even though I'm on.
There we go.
All right, I'm back. I'm so sorry about that. I'm in do not disturb mode, and someone called somehow. Still, I don't even know. So it cuts off in Zoom. I think they should prevent that from happening.
No
um
problem.
yeah, sorry about that. Um so encouragement. Like, how do you encourage people? Because I realized, like, actually when I was younger, I was super discouraging for people if I wanted to win. Like, I would get in people's heads if we were playing a game, so I'd have a psychological advantage. I was really stressed out if someone was better at something than me. I hated
Yeah.
not being the best person on the team. So it was like you learn to kind of like pick at people and gnaw at them and try to put them in their place. But there's a
Yeah.
skill set you learn there that can totally be flipped, in the sense that you learn to play really close attention, and that maybe there's something that's like so true, um, and so necessary that I could point out that they would remember that forever, and it could be good for them to have heard that. So I noticed that I noticed as a Protestant. Paul, when I was reading his letters, begins like every letter with encouragement. And it's through, I think you can reliably put it through the lens of faith, hope, and love. So he commends them on their faith, that they're able to act on these things they haven't yet seen, and that they have this connection to God. That there's in their baptism, especially in their receiving of the Holy Spirit, that he encourages them for their love for one another. Like their love, it's always brought out. If they love God, they will love one another. It's love God, love your neighbor. So,
Sure.
and then the third one is their hope, like that they've put aside the things of this world for what is to come. And so I think that like the best things that have ever happened to me, the things that have stuck with me, are when someone points out like what only God could do in you. You couldn't manufacture it on your own. Like unlike a compliment, unlike a skill, unlike a talent, when someone realizes that those skills and talents can be utilized um, to produce something good for all time and
Right.
beyond time. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's something I really want to grow in. Even like weird versions of that, like Bill Murray. I mean, he's a fraught figure, but I think he understands something in what came with his celebrity, in the sense that if you ever watched the documentary Bill Murray Stories,
Mm,
it started out with I think back in the 90s, he walked up to someone at a Wendy's. A lady just got her fries, and she turned, and Bill Murray was standing there, and he took a fry and ate it and said, "No one's going to believe you." Like, no one's going to believe you, and just walked away. I thought that was so funny. But then he just started showing up. So he shows up everywhere. So in Louisville, Kentucky, when I lived there, his son coached the basketball team, the girls' basketball team, I think. And he would just show up at people's barbecues uninvited.
yeah.
And everyone had the time of their life. Everybody was starting to have these Bill Murray stories. He played tambourine with my band out of nowhere. We were at South
Right.
by Southwest, and he took us bowling and karaoke. It was like, that was better than, I think that's better than money. It's like,
Yeah.
so he, even though from a very lower, like secular perspective, you could see how, like, no, he can give someone a night they'd never forget, that they can talk
Right.
about. And so, how much more so when you're around someone, like I'm talking to someone who's like a holy person, and they see something to give you, like from that wealth and that treasure that's not something temporal, like, hey, a famous person paid attention to me, but like the God of this world has shaped you, like the God, not the God of the world, the God of everything. um,
Right.
he shaped you, like, and he made you on purpose,
Mm,
and that there's all kinds of signs that he was really happy about that. I mean, even in marriage, like the idea that like the thing that the culture abuses so much, like the marital bed, and like they want to take the pleasure from it, detached from all the other things. But when you detach it from the other work, it starts to eat you up like a hedonist. You start to self cannibalize because the pleasure was there to remind us of how much. This is what I believe anyway. I don't know if any church father said this, but it's, so you can correct me, but it seems like that experience was given to us so we can know that God has so much joy in creating and
mm,
creating us and seeing our children come into this world, and that our parents had joy bringing us into this world. And this is something God gave us to tell us about something that is so powerful. We're not ready for it yet. Um, so yeah, I think, I don't know, like that's the power of what we have. The fact that I can like maybe even put an idea in a song that like shakes people up and makes them go towards the good a little more, or
right.
breaks down like a false narrative they had. Um, I think that's a fun thing to do. Never mind like meaningful. Um, I think it's a better use of my time than what I used to do. That's for sure. Anyway, so
I really appreciate that. Neil, I've learned a tremendous amount from you today. And I don't want to be presumptuous either. You may not have a single question for me, but I call it two-way interview. So I leave at least
oh
a little
yeah.
bit to see if you want to ask any question of me. And if you don't, that's perfectly fine. But we could have a little conversation and then call it a day. Thank you so much for
Okay.
this.
But hey. Okay. So here's my questions. All right. So I don't know. We might have talked about this on the phone a little bit, but I don't know if I ever got an explanation from you, because I'm really thinking about this a lot now, and I'm having trouble like looking for someone who in our tradition that has like a really definitive statement on it. So part of the problem is I'm involved in entertainment, and entertainment since I don't know however long, like when it became cheap and affordable and everywhere. We had films and radio and television and music, and music's on all the time. And I think that our culture formed an escapist relationship with entertainment, in the sense that, like, let's say I like horror movies. I like the rush I get from that. I have an app on my phone. I can go find where one's playing and go get it. Um, whether or not that movie had any added value to my life is not necessarily how we evaluate these things. So,
Right.
part of the problem is I'm trying to use that window as a Christian to say something profound, say something meaningful, to, and at the same time, like, hopefully become the soundtrack to some people's lives at, key moments of their lives, songs that were there for them. And we get emails from people kind of confirming that this is happening, which is kind of
Sure.
nice. I get a lot of inquiries into our faith, and I love responding to those. So in this fraught relationship, we also have running parallel to all this. I'm sorry, this is such a long question. It'll be a simple question to answer, hopefully for you. I don't know. So,
Yeah.
but
There you go.
simultaneously, in a parallel sense, we have this, like, I don't know, I call it like pizza party evangelism. Like, my friend Jay Dyer makes fun of that. The pizza slice evangelism of Billy Graham is like, come up and pray this prayer and get your slice of pizza.
Right.
We live in a world where stadium evangelism became a thing, Christian rock, contemporary Christian music became a thing. Um, so I think there's an apprehension now that I'm Orthodox, because we do have, when I was an evangelical, the music you play at church is almost identical to what you would do when you're out on tour. So there wasn't like this idea of, no, in the liturgical space, it is the clearest, most potent form. Like, we sing at church and we don't use distracting instruments because the voice is the most capable thing of carrying the logos as far as music goes. Like, a trumpet is a lot more abstract, than a human voice. It can't really say things like we can. So it seems to me in the church, the art, all of the art is like this beautiful reduction of symbolism and clarity. Um,
Okay.
all pointing in a direction, all pointing in the same way. Everything holds its individuality, but it all looks to God at the same time. And I think this is so wonderful, but I think it's confusing because in America, America's such a strange place, I think, historically. And when I want to move back into the world as an artist, part of the faith, it's not like there's some sort of plug and play place you go in Orthodoxy, right? So the thing is like, how would you say the Orthodox Christian thinks about themselves as a craftsman in the world? How does what we have, what we receive at the altar, flow back into the world in a way that's love and generosity to them from our tradition and beautiful to them, without profaning it, without explaining things that are only going to be trampled on because they're not going to be misunderstood. They're going to be misunderstood. Because I think there's a part in like the parable of the prodigal son that people miss. And that is, yeah, you don't feed pearls to swine, right? Or like, not just that prodigal son story, but this analogy about casting your pearls before swine, is that pigs can't chew pearls either. Like, it's going to break their teeth. And so I think sometimes we present things that are guaranteed to be misunderstood and returned to us heretically, like whether the person meant to or not. So what do you think? Like, I'm exploring this. I'm in conversations with people like Justin Marler, who did Deaths of the World, the zine, and my friend Hieromonk Silouan Justiniano. He has so many names, it's hard to remember. But we've been having wonderful conversations about this. I'd love to see, like, what thoughts do you have about this? And I don't want to think that music's just music, like in a secular way. I just make good music and I put it out there. I also don't want to think of it as a proselytization tool, like that kind of idea, because I'm not really, like, I wouldn't know how to make someone an Orthodox Christian with our music. That's not even how I'm thinking. But I am trying to show them the good. And how does an Orthodox Christian do this in the 21st century as an American? Do you have any thoughts? I'll take anything.
I, I have a few, and thank you for asking me that. And I speak as a priest and not an artist,
Mm-hmm.
um, and not a great priest at that. But the thing that comes to mind right now is are those words from the liturgy, "Thine own of thine own, we offer unto thee on behalf of all and for all." In our liturgy, when the priest at at the nearest moment to communion takes the gifts of bread and wine and lifts them up and offers them to God, um, not as not as our gifts to Him, but as the things that He's given to us that we are returning to Him to make them to sanctify them.
Mm.
In that same near that same moment in the liturgy, we ask God to send down His Holy Spirit, and we say upon two, send down Thy Holy Spirit upon us and upon these gifts here offered, and make this bread the precious body of Thy Christ, and so forth. Why do I refer to these first in answering your question? First, because God gave everyone gifts, and one of the many gifts that He gave to you is a gift of music. He gave that to you directly and indirectly. Directly because you're a unique creation, and indirectly because your dad and your mom and your whole family, as you were describing to us all earlier, y'all are marinating in this from the time you were before you could even understand what it was. You are already that.
Yeah.
But that is a gift that God gave you, and we could say as a priest in the world, your job as an artist is to offer that to God, just like we offer the bread and wine in the liturgy. The bread and the wine in the liturgy is a very specific offering, and it's our spiritual nourishment. That's why we do that. But in the world, when at the end of the liturgy, oftentimes in the liturgy, it's, I think, mistranslated. We say, "Let us depart in peace," and that sounds like, well, we got what we came here for, and we're filled now, and so now we can go home and do, as you might have called it in some of your earlier words, the secular part of things. We're going to marinate in the world now because we got our spiritual thing. But a better translation might be, "Let us go forth in peace." Portafindus, it means go. Let us be going. It's a like a present progressive, and it is missional. You yourself, as an artist, and specifically as an Orthodox Christian artist, may not be intentionally intending to, let's say, convert someone, or as an evangelical might say, win someone to Jesus or something like that. But your offering, nevertheless, serves a purpose like that, because it's being given to God as an offering that He might in response do something with that gift. How will He send down His Holy Spirit upon your listeners as a result of the offering that you're lifting up? That's a very important thing. It's one reason why a Christian artist should be particularly careful, as much as possible, about the words he or she uses and about the way he or she dresses and so forth, not because of those external things like pietistically speaking, but because they're part of the offering. And you yourself have noted, as I've heard from a number of the others that I've had a chance to have conversations with I've heard from them as well, that let's take Skillet, for example. Over the shoulder right there is a picture of John and Corey Cooper and Seth, their guitarist, playing in Mississippi. He shows me from various concerts these sheets, the signs that people make. Skillet saved my life. Well, we know as Orthodox Christians, and he himself knows as a committed Christian, that it's God who's saving the lives of those people, but he saves them through the efforts of his servants, his hands and his feet, and that's you and the musician in that case. So I would say that, how do we do this? That your preparation to write new music would be bookended by prayer and the conscious knowledge that you have a gift that God gave you. It's not yours. You are doing your best not to bury it under leaves in the woods, but to put it on the lampstand for your listeners, and eventually that they would not glorify you for it, though they might give you credit for some good, but that they would be able to eventually see through that to the one who is really the source of that goodness in their lives. So it's important to remember that while we as priests are priests at the altar, every Christian is a priest everywhere he goes, or she, in that sense. Your wife equally, in her share of your musical life and your concerts and so forth. Um, so I don't know if that's too
No, I
circumnavigation
mean,
of.
like, you had me right away. So
Yeah,
before you, like, I think you thought the communion analogy would be abstract, but that like hit me right away. So
yeah,
the offering of the gifts as a priest, I think that struck me as profound in the sense that, of course, it's a fractal relationship from where Christ gives himself, we give the himself through the communion. I take that and I give Christ, right? But whatever form now, but at every form, like you could say that there's more of a veil to how it's received, right?
yeah.
Which is appropriate, right? Because obviously there are certain things like as an Orthodox Christian, there's things I understand about the nature of God's glory and the light of God. That part of what's happening here is that we're being introduced to these things in a form in which won't destroy us, in God's gentleness with a capital G, in which how he reveals his love, that it doesn't eradicate us. And so it just seems like that there's like it's like another layer of that. It's like a fractal version of what's happening in the church, is that I should at the very beginning think of my whole life as how does that same pattern play itself out? That's what the pattern's for, in a
Yeah.
way. Also, one of the things you said that I think, well, no, I won't get into that, but that's really, really helpful. Like what you said about like the Christian bands is a really interesting thing. So I got really good advice once from Kate and I did. We went and saw one of my favorite songwriters in Christian music was a woman named Anne Herring, and she was one of the three siblings in the second chapter of Acts. And I think one of the coolest concept records of all time is their concept record from they started in the '70s called "The Roar of Love." I love the heck out of it. But I asked her like what do you do like afterwards? Everybody's coming up and complimenting you all the time. Like do you correct them every day? She's like no, I just collect it like a flower they gave me, and then when I go home, I pray and I give those to God and I thank them. And I thought that was super helpful. And then what my priest tells me is kind of funnier, which is these are issues of humility and what praise to take unto ourselves, and he's like, because I confess pride and being bloviated in my words and mind and all the time. It's just something I struggle with. So
Right.
he's like, well, Neil, it's important to remember because, like, I had to come back from London or something like that, and Kate and I get to play with a symphony orchestra there, the Bulgarian Symphony Orchestra, and they had done one of our songs, and we performed with them, and it was awesome. And it felt like a lot of good things happened. But he's kind of like, yeah, remember you're the donkey that carried Jesus. You know what I mean? Like in the sense that
Right.
donkey might think everybody's cheering for him, but you know what I mean? It's
Right.
like I was like, that is like exactly what I am. I'm like, that's the best I got, and I think that's really grounding. Okay, so I'm gonna have to think about what you said too, because there's some implications to that. I'm gonna hold that, and like I like to kick things around in my mind while I'm doing other things to see how it compares to what I'm doing or testing what I'm doing against it. So that's really helpful. Thank you for that. I might have another question or two if that's okay.
Sure. Let me add just one other point. I'd
Okay.
like to make a comment about the pearls and the swine.
Mm.
Um, um, accepting Jesus as at his word, but if we do put it a little bit into the parable of the prodigal son, I think it is important that um, we we ourselves and you yourself as an Orthodox Christian musician should not fear to go to any place or to
Mm.
speak to anyone. Um, I do know from my conversations with a number of artists who are Christians and take that Christianity very seriously that there's a certain reticence, of course, to go play in extremely dark places
Hmm.
because there are dark bands and there are dark places, and one needs to have a certain level of spiritual, let's say, I don't want to say spiritual self-confidence, maybe it's better to say spiritual undergirding and maturity
Mm.
in order to be confident to be even a small light in a big dark place. But um, at the end of the day, I was in the pig pen, and my role as a Christian, lay aside my role as a priest, but let's say my role as a Christian period is not to fear the pig pen, um,
Mm.
but to go into it, not and know who is cleansing me, and point people back home, especially to increasing number of people who were, let's say, as Father Thomas Hopko often said, born in the pig pen, and therefore, when they come to their senses, have no memory of where to return to. And so you see that vastly more than I would ever see that, because you, by nature of your artistry and concerts and so forth, you are in the midst of all kinds of people. I don't have access to, um, by which I mean really broken people who are longing for, as you've said many times, the good, meaning God, um, but they have no memory of who He is and where His home is, because they were born in the pig pen. They never left Him, proverbially speaking. They
Hmm.
never left Him. That is, they didn't leave the church, go in the pig pen, and come back in a way that you sort of did by your Christian upbringing, and I did in mine. Um, they were never in it. So we got to be in the pig pen with them a little bit in order to show them where home is when they come to their senses.
Wow. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. That's something that maybe someone should have told 20-year-old Neil too. Um,
Well,
that's,
and 20-year-old Jay Parker.
yeah, exactly. Okay. So one of the things that happens as a result, okay, so the conversation we're having right now, um, my audience is strange to us because we do have a lot in common with almost everyone in the sense that there's some kind of similar, obviously a similarity to our tastes and maybe what we want to see artistically in the world. Because when I honestly, for the last 20 years, maybe not 20, close, close to 20 years, I 20 years ago I stopped making songs to try to make someone else happy, if that makes sense. Like I realized that the much more reliable way to be an artist was to make songs that we liked, that we
Yeah.
wanted to hear, and hope there were other people like us. That seemed like a much better strategy as opposed to trying to have like all these critics or fans that might like this thing. I do that a little bit, but it's kind of like after the fact kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's like when I'm going to add some ornamentation, might be like, well, you know what? They keep asking for more guitar solos, so this song's getting a guitar solo. Why
Right.
not? Okay, so
Right.
things like that. Okay, but this conversation right here would be totally construed somehow as political, like as a Republican conversation, because let's say Christianity might be more associated with Republicans. Now, when a Christian nationalist comes around and they'll like look at me and talk to me because like, oh, you're a Christian, and they'll just start saying all this kind of like Republican, Democratic, democracy type of angles and stuff. I don't participate in this system like this. Okay, just in a short run, like what I tell people is I say, listen, just think about we're in a group, we're friends. If things get down to the point where we need to vote to move forward, we're not in unity. That's the last ditch effort to maintain unity. So I think what we're sitting on is not as good as all these people who are fighting for it assume. I think it's good in the sense that it does when there's no coherent narrative in a culture. Giving people a vote does vent off some of that frustration and energy. At the same time, I don't it's not the ideal. Like we're not living in an ideal, so I'm not fighting for this system and participating in it. But the problem is conservatives think I'm liberal, liberals think I'm conservative.
I
All
see.
the things we talked about right now would be mostly misunderstood. And thank God, like a lot of these people don't like. I have these conversations all the time. So my question would be that I can't control. Okay,
Right.
do I should I talk less? Like what I'm doing right now, is this in a way like undermining the importance of something else I'm doing? Or is this part of the plan? Like, am I supposed to do both things at the same time? Like there's a lot of opportunities opening up. Like I get asked to speak at conferences. I don't know why this is happening. I'm having a desire to maybe like help more artists become artists because this path
Right.
is super convoluted. So there are other things I want to do too. Um, and I feel like the conversation is necessary, but every once in a while I feel like it might, I don't know, it might present an opportunity to, like, too many opportunities to be misunderstood and misconstrued. Does that make sense? This might be too wishy-washy of a question to give a solid
Well,
answer to, but what do you
I'm not, I will give an answer. I'm not sure it's to your question. So let's see. First, earlier, when I was asking you to describe yourself in three terms,
Mhm.
um, you put yourself, if I recall, you said Orthodox Christian. After that, you said husband and father, I think, and then maybe you said artist after that. I can't remember the third one. We'll have to go back and listen again.
Mhm.
Nevertheless, you demonstrated in doing that a principle that I think is important in our lives as Christians, and all the more so as Orthodox Christians. But it's true of every human person. If we think of if every human person is a flagpole, um, only one flag can fly. Flags are linear in their running up the
Mhm.
flagpole. You can only have one flag at the top. For some people, that's Republican. For some people, that's Christian nationalist. For some
Mhm.
people, that's um, progressive liberal. I'm not sure what all the titles and various titles are, but for
Yeah.
me, the flag at the top is Jesus. Um, and and I believe that's congruent with what you said. I would likewise put, my second flag would be my wife and my family. My third flag, what would it be after that? I'm not sure. But in in whatever in whatever in whatever endeavor we would endeavor to do, that sounds all rather convoluted. Whatever it would
Circular.
be that we would put ourselves to do, we ought to do it with that flagpole in mind. And I mean, as an Orthodox Christian, I believe that on the day that I would put Republican flag or Democrat flag or X flag or Y flag or American flag for that matter, or Russian flag or Serbian flag or Ukrainian flag, any other flag, if it gets above Jesus, um, ruins the flagpole. It's in the wrong order, and really
Mm.
it's functioning from the perspective of, let's say, the world and its categories first. So um, I would simply suggest not only to you but to me that whatever it is, we like Saint Anthony the Great. He was one time asked, "What must I do to be saved?" And he gave three answers. He said, whoever you are, always have God before you. Whatever you do, do it according to the Holy Scriptures. And wherever you are, do not quickly leave that place. So he's talking about always having God before us, always trying to model the Scriptures, and a certain amount of stability. And
Ah,
so,
that's what it means. I didn't understand the last part until you said stability. I was like, oh,
yeah,
I didn't
yeah,
understand the implication. Yeah, good.
in a certain kind of way, it's St. Anthony's way of saying, don't take the geographical solution, because
Mhm.
wherever you go, you will find yourself there, and and uh, and the Interrupters sing a little song about that actually. In any event, I would say in our lives, in your life as an artist, in my life as a priest, we just need to keep Jesus at the top of that flagpole. In your work as a musician, that does not necessarily require that you say Jesus in every song, that you wear an Orthodox Christian cross on the
Mm.
outside of your jacket, that you have, stickers of saints on your guitar, whatever it is. It does not necessarily mean that. In fact, it might not be a good idea to do those things. But in in the way that you carry yourself, in the message that you give, that that it would be clear the direction you're pointing. Um,
Mm.
I think I'm not sure if I answered your question, but
You
that's
did,
the
you
general.
did, you did, because that's really helpful because, okay, so there's things we run into. So obviously, as an Orthodox Christian, there are certain types of Orthodox Christians that never understand anything we're doing or why we're doing it and are mad. Like it's not even really coming from an Orthodox perspective. It's coming from like there are certain types of people that when they see a lot happening, they get out pruning shears. I think this happens in general in the world. Like we want to cut before we water. So I don't, that doesn't, but it doesn't bother me at the same time. I kind of get why they understand. And I kind of sympathize with their point. I'm like, yeah, I have a dirty job. I get it. Like I'm hanging out with these people over here and you don't like them. I get it. Um, although I don't find that that's like Jesus avoided the, certain types of people like either. So I don't know where that claim is coming from, just from a theological perspective. I understand it from like a personality mode. But so, for example, there's librettos, which is an overarching story to a lot of our records. So there is one that functions more like a rock opera than maybe some of our other concept records. It's called Queen of the Night.
Okay.
And a couple of our most popular songs are in that. So one is called Enchanté. So when I was writing Enchanté,
Love that. I love Enchanté. I love that
oh,
song.
thank you. I really like people who are in the know kind of understand it's a roast of materialism and its effect on people's lives.
Right.
Now, the thing about the song because it's the idea is if you lose sight of the purpose of things and you lose sight of the higher spirits and your life becomes disenchanted, you still want that food. You still want a spiritual connection and you're going to connect with the wrong spirit. So in the song, the hook is if we can't save the dead, we're going to raise hell instead.
Right.
Now, right. So I feel like that when I wrote it, the song, I felt like it was strongly profound in the sense that it was truly what's going on. Here's the weird side of it. I have to sing that line like I mean it. Kate has to sing that line like she
I
means
see.
it. So this is one of the edge dilemmas. Like I've settled to the point. It's like no, it's in the context of a wider story. This is
Yeah.
truly the perspective. I want to even make the villain. I don't want to make the villain to a strong man. I want to steel man the villain so that it really feels formidable what we're overcoming. Because I think materialism, for example, is a really formidable opponent in the modern world, preventing us from connecting spiritually with the truth. So I've kind of prioritized that truth over the idea that what I'm saying is supposed to have some sort of liturgical clarity to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes. I would just say I I never really thought about what you just said. I can see how um, that could be an internal dilemma for a person who takes his faith seriously and at the same time talks about essentially casting off faith and or whatever and live in the dream, so to speak, live in the secular materialist dream. I would just say that I mean, at the end of the day, Dostoevsky didn't sing his novels. He wrote them and they went in print, but he wrote about murderers and some pretty terrible, grisly scenes.
Yeah.
But no one accuses him of supporting, grisly murder because he wrote about one. You see what I'm saying?
I totally get
So
it.
but I would say that changing the changeable as a musician who has to sing those things, um, it's just all the more important that people would see in your lives that you're singing about a matter that you don't embrace as a matter. So um, they shouldn't find you raucously drunk at a party someplace. And
Yeah.
I don't mean that
Yeah. No, no, you're
like
right. Of
like
course.
we were mentioning earlier. It's not meant to be prudish. Everyone
Mhm.
knows that Orthodox Christians raise a glass. Um, on the other hand, one has also seen many Orthodox Christians on Pascha who have gone way over celebratory merrymaking. So so long as you're when you're singing about if we can't, would you say if you can't raise the dead, then we'll raise hell instead or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's like one of 30 songs like that for us. Well, so there's something weird about singing though. You know what I mean? Like it means something different to sing something than to write it down.
Okay.
Um so because we're especially at church because we're used to singing things we believe. But I don't
Fair enough.
really think it's a massive problem. What it does, it irks me once in a while. Like someone will send me like or tag us in a picture and they like tattooed it on their arm like a motto.
Um,
You know what I'm saying? So, but the thing is, at the same time, right? Like when like you use Dostoevsky when he's writing the murderous thoughts
Right.
of a character, it's not helpful for him to make up an alternative line of thinking that a murder would really have if we want to understand the world. And because there's a sense of when you realize you see the villain doing something and you identify with the thing the villain's doing and you're rooting for, or you do that yourself. Like an example I use all the time to illustrate this point is mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all, right? That's what the queen says because she's vain and she's pursuing something in her insecurity that would never make her secure. Um,
Right.
which is all insecurity, right? We're pursuing something that would never make us secure if we got it. So, but the reality is everybody who's seen that movie, and then let's just imagine I'm a girl who's posting on Instagram, I might be saying those same things in my heart and not even realize it, and not learn to identify with the villain.
Mm.
So I feel like there's like a way when I sing something that's really beautiful and true, and I know it's like true, not just like a true fact of the world, but uh true in a relational sense to God. I get really moved by that. But also at the same time, I have to be honest, when I'm writing these songs and they're about a villain's perspective, I'm moved, but not moved because I believe it's like this is what a human being should be. This is what comes from your heart. But like, no, this is a real picture of what happens when things go wrong, and you should learn to identify that in yourself. And this could be a good sandbox for that. I just don't know. The problem is like I guess we all understand this. You can put something into the world, you can make something good, and it gets misused. So I'm just not sure how much responsibility I should take that on my own shoulders when that happens.
Well, I can appreciate that, and like you said earlier about my question to you, I want to marinate on that one a little bit. You know, especially not being an artist, I have a few thoughts, but um, one one might be, well, one is you are not the artist today that you were when you wrote that,
Hmm.
and so maybe um, maybe if your inner voice is saying, I don't know what to do with that. Maybe there's a way to slightly rework the lyric for as you sing it. Maybe you might put it in the third person. Um, before one learns to, be, be, if one couldn't learn to raise the dead, then he'll wind up raising hell instead. In that case, it's a declarative. It's like an observation rather than a participation in the thing.
Yeah, that's how I
Um,
see it.
but then again, I've also learned a lot of things recently about musicians and concerts, and how people want to hear the song, and not a rendition of the song when you're playing live because they've memorized it from the album and they
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
hear it just
exactly. Yeah.
further complicated. But that might inform how you write future songs. The truth is, as you yourself grow uh, in in the knowledge and love of God, and you um, grow in your own Orthodox faith, um, and if you opt to speak about it more and more publicly in various ways, the people will have less chance to misinterpret you as a result. Nevertheless, the other thing that came to mind, you said, just because that you might say something very creative that people misinterpret and use for the bad instead of the good. Um, that's You're talking about fractal relationships. That's exactly what we've all done with everything that God gave us.
I know. It happens to scripture for one. So I guess that really helped me think through it. Okay. All right, I'm gonna keep thinking about that. But no, you gave me some good thoughts there, even though you were just kind of off the cuff. That was helpful. I appreciate that. I just was informed by my wife who snuck in the room because I'm in her room right now that she needs to get ready to leave and all of her stuff is in here. I'm in her dressing room, so I have to
Well,
get off the
well,
call because she has appointments.
please thank her that we've been able to take this time together, and that we owe her 23 minutes or something like that, which we'll repay in some good way.
No, thank you so much. This was such a fun style of conversation. I liked this. It was a real break in the routine of doing podcasts or talking to people on podcasts. I always enjoy it, but there's something unique about the style you're in the approach you're taking here. And also I feel like you're kind of like I need mentors, and this is like a little mentoring session. It feels like too. Like I get to say my thing out loud, and I get to watch someone who's thought about these things react to it. That's super helpful. Thank you for that, and very insightful for me.
It's my sincere pleasure. I'm very grateful to get to know you. I'm very grateful for our time today, and let's keep in touch and keep going.
I love it. Thank you.
God bless you and Kate and all the music that you do, and our love to all the saints down in Florida. God bless you, my friend.
All right, Father, I got to go. We'll talk again soon, hopefully. Are you planning on coming? Can you come up to the Symbolic World Summit in May that Jonathan's hosting?
Let's talk about it offline. We'll
Yeah,
figure it
because I
out.
think that you should definitely, like, if you want to talk to a bunch of people at one time, there's going to be a lot of artists to talk to that might be interesting. You can just come with a little, I've got a little portable microphone set up for phones and stuff to record interviews. So that could be a cool thing. I think it would be fun to have you there. So anyway, we'll talk about it more. All right.
Thanks so much. Okay.
I'll catch you later. Thank you, Father. God bless.